In the world of Detective Conan, it was the beginning of the president with the highest mortality rate. Shirakawa felt extremely panicked and anxious and felt that every employee under his team was sharpening their swords and exposing their murderous eyes. No, I must be a good president who abides by the law, respects the virtuous and the virtuous, has clear rewards and punishments, and is selfless. Never become the protagonist of a murder case. But 1 year in the world of science is equivalent to 28 years in the normal world. If employees are paid annually, wouldn't it save a lot of money? If you borrow a huge sum of money from a bank and agree to repay it in 2 years, wouldn't you never have to repay it in your lifetime? Lying trough. The pattern opened up in one go. What should we do if we fail to recruit employees from the neighboring company? Take the Grim Reaper Conan and walk around the door, waiting for the president to die suddenly and all staff to resign. What should we do if we fail to acquire our competitors? Bring the Muri family to the door, laugh at the bomb explosion, and directly copy the bottom. What to do when encountering malicious competition from rogue companies? Then you're still thinking nonsense. Let Qin Jiu open Apache and destroy humanity directly. Mauri Kagoro. Surprisingly, she created a love game using the modeling of Miss Okano Yoko. Hee suck up hee di dan san sha. Brother Shirakawa, when will the next Ultraman movie be released? I feel that Kamen Rider looks much better than Kamen Superman. Suzuki Yukiko. Jun Shirakawa is really impressive. In less than a year, the total assets of the company are about 1% of Suzuki's consortium. He's really amazing. Qin Wine. Make money. Li Ji Chi Zhuang, Narazawa Shirakawa. At first, I just wanted to be a good citizen who speaks 5 words, 4 beauties, and 3 loves. Who knows how it turned out like this? I am also very desperate. Keywords of the novel. Capitalists in detective name. No pop-ups, capitalists in detective name. Complete collection of TXT download, capitalists in detective name. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. The cute new president in Conan's world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The cute new president in Conan's world, interesting, so interesting. I gradually understood everything. In the empty room, a young man of 17 or 18 stood in front of the mirror, frowning and making strange noises from time to time, like an unlucky person who had been inexplicably contaminated. When angry, well, character will appear on the forehead, and as the level of anger increases, the number of, well, characters will also increase. In extremely angry situations, there will be a raging fire behind the scenes, and there is a chance to trigger the big head effect. When confused, regardless of the size of the eyes, they will turn into 2 dots. When embarrassed, a crow will appear on top of the head. When laughing wildly, the tongue can extend out for dozens of centimeters. Is this reasonable? Of course it's reasonable. It's very reasonable. Looking at the handsome but noticeably disproportionate face in the mirror, Shirakawa first revealed the same style of, "Do you also think of dancing?" by Uchiha. The next second, he seamlessly switched to Malik's classic beauty, and finally transformed into a Q.version villain. I tried every expression I could think of, and then I felt the power of the anime world while observing the electronic watch on my wrist that could not be taken down in any case. In his final memory before his death, a black and straight girl who claimed to be the god of death with a sickle descended from the sky and gave 2 choices. First, enjoy a free one-way ticket to hell. Secondly, I will travel across different worlds and work for them for a lifetime. 2 options were presented in front of him, and Shirakawa did not hesitate to choose the latter. If you work, then work. After all, you can earn money by living an extra second. What else do you need a bicycle for? Besides, this is a time travel. As a vibrant young man in his 30s, how could he not have thought about the scene of going to another world to dominate and being surrounded by countless beauties? As for this wristwatch, which resembles the main god space used to control the reincarnation, it can be considered as the golden finger given by the Grim Reaper girl. It is said that if used properly, one can truly become a god of death. Accompanied by the familiar Windows XP startup animation, 2 Word documents and an Excel spreadsheet appeared on the semi-transparent light screen that only he could see. Double-click on the bold and black Chinese characters on the desktop background to open the settings set. Congratulations, young Grim Reaper agent. This is Detective Conan. 2 years before the start of the plot, your new identity is as president of Nito Electronics Company, Limited Narazawa Shirakawa. Detective Conan. Just this sentence makes a certain passer.by who is still immersed in the joy of joining the anime dazzled. Is it the Kashua city, which is 15 times more dangerous than the least safe city on Earth? The number of bombs installed in that modified Tokyo that can rival the fragrant milk tea. Bao Yu, this place is not popular. How deadly. It seemed to be to prove that what he said was true, and almost as he finished reading this line, the doorbell suddenly rang. Who? Shirakawa is highly vigilant and a thief who breaks through empty doors. A serial killer. Or did the original owner accidentally witness something and therefore be silenced? President, I am Hutsang. I have something very important to discuss with you. There was no response for a long time, and a thick middle-aged man's voice sounded outside the door. The man seemed very confident that there was someone in the room and had no intention of leaving. Proficient in using Ctrl+F to search for the name of Tiger Warehouse, the identity of the person quickly appeared before his eyes. Hutsang Dingping, the financial manager of Naidu Electronics Company, Limited, can be considered as his godfather or godfather in a sense, with a rigid personality and a strict demeanor. He was a close friend of Shirakawa's father who grew up playing, and also an elder of Nito Electronics Company, Limited. After the death of Narazazu, he almost maintained the company's development on his own. Seeing this, Shirakawa breathed a sigh of relief. According to this description, it should not be the kind of ambitious person who wants to kill the president and monopolize the power of the company. Wait. Quickly swiping the mouse and flipping back, he quickly found a sentence that he had not paid attention to earlier. After the death of Narazazu, he almost maintained the development of the company on his own. So my biological father in this lifetime has already died. The sudden news of his death shocked Baichuan for a moment, but soon he was relieved. That's right, after all, he is a ruthless person who combines the 2 major buffs of Father of the Traverse and Conan world as president, and immortals are difficult to save. The doorbell rang persistently, and he had no choice but to grit his head and go to greet it. Outside the door were 3 men wearing black wide-brimmed hats, black suits, and black ties. Such appearances naturally reminded someone familiar with the plot of a black organization named after wine. Is it possible that this person in front of me has nothing to do with the distillery? Shirakawa, let me introduce you. This is the game team leader Matsuda Yoshinobu, and this is the newly appointed RD team leader, Mitsuro Funichi, said Hukura, who was not clear about Shirakawa's inner thoughts. Although it may not be appropriate to visit at this time, I would still like to ask you to pause the development of the game console. Hutsang has no intention of being polite and goes straight to the topic, in a sense more powerful than the nominal president by Chuan. Using game consoles as keywords, the set will quickly provide answers. That is a device called somatosensory combat, which will receive a needle-like feedback and impact sensation based on the part of the game character being attacked. It is a cross-era game console promoted and developed by Narazawa Shirakawa, which has attracted a large amount of funds from the company. After the assassination of former President Narazazu, the company was in a state of panic, and the newly developed game also had poor sales. The once dominant fighting game company, Narazazu Electronics Company, Limited, has fallen to the point of not having enough money to produce the next game. Therefore, Genpei Hattori intends to suspend game console development and gather all funds to produce a new game. Body-feeling fighting game console. This somewhat special machine immediately reminded Shirakawa of the game hall case in which FBI agent Judy was involved. The perpetrator of that case seemed to have used this game machine to complete his murder plan. The machine that can be related to Conan is still studying nonsense. It's not impossible to stop. After hesitating for a moment, Shirakawa spoke slowly, but I must see your complete plan for creating a new game, and at least one demo. He is 100% supportive of stopping development. Hutsong Gingping came today, not so much as a request, but rather a notification. Didn't you hear him just say, new R&D team leader? A financial supervisor has the ability to decide the work of people at his level, and Tiger Warehouse's reputation in the company is even more exaggerated than imagined. Instead of falling out with this company veteran now and causing a series of bad things to follow, it's better to follow his instructions. Moreover, Shirakawa clearly remembers that the use of physical combat game consoles was already something that happened after Shinichi Kudo became Conan, in other words, at least 2 years later. Spending a considerable amount of money every day for a commercial game console that suffered from a murder case shortly after, causing its reputation to plummet and subsequently being completely forgotten by the will of the world, is clearly not a cost-effective deal. However, considering that I seem to be the leader who has always insisted on and led the development, I suddenly changed my mind and the difference in personality is too large, so I have also put forward relatively strict conditions. Seeing that Shirakawa's attitude seemed somewhat relaxed, Hokura Jengika directly took out a CD from his backpack, and the game team leader Matsuda Isin also cooperated and handed over a document. This is the game's demo and business plan for you to review. Obviously, the two were already prepared. Put the CD into the computer and while the game is loading, Shirakawa opens the project book with a new game name. Sumo Warrior. Just seeing this name, a strong sense of street fighting hits me head on. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. There were many unexpected visitors today. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. There were many unexpected visitors today. In their past lives, there were many Japanese games, and whether it was Sonica Bitch or Nintendo, they had never seen a game with sumo as its main selling point become a global hit. And this game can only be described as poor in terms of graphics and gameplay. The art style is too realistic, and the characters have almost no variation. Except for the 3 body differences of white, yellow, and black, each contestant can only be distinguished by the color of the crotch cloth. When fighting, it is basically 2 pieces of meat fighting each other. There are only 3 types of attack methods in combat: pushing, pulling, and holding. It's not so much a fighting game as a guessing game. The only ones that look innovative are mini-games such as soaking in hot springs, eating sumo hot pot, exercising, and getting married, but these contents did not appear in the demo and only stayed on the project plan. No, it's too bad. In the eyes of Hutsong's more hopeful eyes, Bai Chuan rudely sentenced this game to death. When he said 3 words that were too bad, Matsuda and Kane's expressions were calm, as if they had already known the result. Only Hokura's face was full of shock, as if he didn't believe that such an excellent game would be denied. Hutsong Gingping is a veteran of the company, but his understanding of the game is undoubtedly the worst among everyone present. President, the planning has always been done by the former president, and I have not been responsible for this before, so there may still be some shortcomings. Matsuda awkwardly spoke up, knowing that his game demo was actually very rough. Firstly, he has a background in art and is not particularly proficient in game production. He was only able to secure this position after the former team leader resigned due to his obedience and sufficient seniority. Secondly, the company's funds are very tight, wishing to split a penny into 2 and spend it in half. The amount of money that can be used to create demos is even less. In addition, the job hopping of several core programmers has resulted in many of the envisioned things not being truly implemented. Looking at the game team leader who seemed to have no idea of his own as he closely followed Hutsong's footsteps, Bai Chuan suddenly asked, who is the person who added settings such as eating hot pot and soaking in hot springs in sumo games. Matsuda hesitated for a few seconds and responded with a hint of surprise, "It's me." "Did you also change the fighting mechanism?" "Yes." "Not bad," Baichuan nodded lightly. "This game leader is better than expected, at least his thinking is not rigid, and he did not choose to hang himself on the path of traditional fighting. He has already learned about the popular games previously produced by Naidu Electronics Company, Limited, which were all realistic styles such as King of the Ring and Unrestricted Fighting, by flipping through the setup. This may be due to limitations in technology and hardware device performance, making it difficult to achieve more grandeur, or it may be because the entire industry has formed a mindset that makes it difficult to make breakthroughs. King of Fighters, Street Fighter, and Death or Life are all games that have never appeared in this world, and he needs a bold executor. President, have you ever heard of Gal Game? Realizing that Shirakawa had not opposed the changes he had made to the fighting game, Matsuda's courage finally grew stronger. Didn't I say that? Absolutely. We can't do that kind of game. Before Matsuda could finish speaking, Hokura slammed the table angrily and shouted. We are a prestigious enterprise in the industry, playing games that are not well known. How can we establish ourselves in this industry? The reputation that the company has accumulated over the years cannot be destroyed by you. Don't forget how you got into this position. In front of the senior Tiger warehouse, Matsuda had no courage to refute. He lowered his head and dared not say a word, only clenching his fists and trembling slightly. The meeting between the four senior executives ended awkwardly like this. Before leaving, Hutsang patted his chest even more flat, promising that he would be able to produce a stunning new demo in a week, completely oblivious to the black air floating behind Matsuda's heart. Perhaps in a few days, we will hear the news that Hutsang Ginping died in an accident. No, there should still be a detective who finds evidence of Matsuda's crime and kneels down to tears in touching music, happily closing the case. Shirakawa naturally saw Matsuda-isen's almost reduced killing intent, but he didn't even have any intention of reminding him. I am just a traveler who knows nothing, so the top priority is to go back and honestly read the set. At least you need to figure out your interpersonal relationships, otherwise if a muscular man comes to your door and claims to be your boyfriend later, it will really kill you. The set is divided into 3 parts in total. The first part is a general introduction, from which Shirakawa knows that the new identity arranged for him by the Grim Reaper girl. Narazawa Shirakawa's interpersonal relationships are very simple. I have been studying in the UK for the past few years, and after returning to my home country, I spent a lot of time in the research laboratory developing new gaming equipment, which is a typical technical residence. I have a normal sexual orientation and have previously dated a British girlfriend. Currently, I am single and have no bad habits. I also do not participate in gatherings with colleagues. In summary, it is a relatively easy-to-play existence. The second part is a detailed account of the events that occurred 1 week before his travels. The main recorded event in this paragraph is only one, the case of the death of former President Narazazu. The cause of death was a sharp blade cut of the throat, and the place of death was in the president's office, which was arranged as a secret room. The first person to find the body was Nara Sawada's second wife and the stepmother of Nara Sawada, Shirakawa. According to Koch's law, the murderer is naturally the stepmother of the first discoverer. The cause of the incident was discovered and the stepmother embezzled company funds to take care of Little White Face. Under the 3 consecutive divorce lawsuits and compensation from the former president, she directly awakened the killing factor in the local indigenous bloodline of Mihua, teamed up with Little White Face to kill her husband and disguised herself as a secret room murder case. This set of operations was concealed from the police, but was caught by a part-time detective who often passed by the crime scene. His stepmother and Little White Face were both imprisoned. Due to the fact that the child born to his stepmother and former president recently lost both legs in a racing car and is still unconscious, Narazawa Shirakawa, who was not the first heir, succeeded him as the world's most dangerous profession. President. I always feel that this matter is not simple behind it. The coincidental racing and unconscious cheap younger brother made Baichuan feel that there seemed to be some mystery in the whole thing. To solve this mystery, it is estimated that we can only search for it in the memory of the original owner recorded in the third part for 19 years. However, flipping through books to read and memorize is different from going through memories in the brain. The total memory of 19 years is estimated to be 10 to 20 million words, making it difficult to read them all in a short period of time. Therefore, he chose to first check the following: tasks and rewards, and ability tree, both of which are very small in size and can be read without spending too much time. Once the current situation is thoroughly sorted out, it is not too late to take a little more time to review memory. The task for Baichuan to come to the world of Kushui is very simple: to encounter detectives with the name of the Grim Reaper and obtain Grim energy from them. Use this energy to please the Grim Reaper girl in exchange for the skills in the ability tree. The first layer of the ability tree has 3 abilities, namely the Death Eye with stunning and hypnotic abilities, the Death Crystal that can instantly elevate a skill to the pinnacle of humanity, and the Death Emblem that captures the breath of death. The badge is definitely not needed. When Gerald's badge moves, there must be beautiful witches around. When I move this badge, there must be detectives around, right? If there are only 2 options left, hypnosis is a good ability, but it's also good to elevate a skill to the world's peak level. Isn't it possible to do peak karate and single-handedly hit Kyoko Shin? Thinking about it, Baichuan suddenly laughed. His energy point is now 0, and no matter how much he thinks, it's just lustful. We need to find an opportunity to get in touch with detectives. However, during this period, Shinichi Kudo was still a junior high school student, Yuzua Kudo was often not in Japan, and Kagoro Mori was still a cat and dog detective. It seems that there really is no existence that meets the definition of death. Just as he was pondering where to find the detective, the doorbell rang again. There are so many unexpected visitors today. With the previous experience, Shirakawa no longer had any fear this time. He reached out and grabbed the doorknob, looking out from the cat's eye. But this sight made his pupils contract and his eye muscles twitch constantly. There were 2 men standing outside the door. One was pitch black, with long golden hair that reached his waist, a cold expression, and a face full of evil energy. The other, with a tiger back and a bare waist, had a strong physique and was also wearing black clothes. Did you run into a real distillery? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Qin Sauce is only 1.7 meters tall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Qin Sauce is only 1.7 meters tall. What? Don't know me? The cold voice echoed in Baichuan's ear through the door panel, and the sound of bullets loading could still be vaguely heard. The person outside seemed to have a complete view of his every move. How could it be? It's just that there seem to be random murderers around these days, and we must be vigilant. At the fastest speed, Baichuan made up a reasonable excuse. He opened the door and maintained a smile on his face, but in his heart, he had already cursed the unreliable set 1,000 times. No. Do I have any connection with the distillery? Didn't it be written in the set? Is it difficult for such an important thing to be hidden in the memory of a certain year? Do you want to have this kind of mentality? Qin Jiu didn't enter the door, his cold eyes crossed over Baichuan and looked at the room behind him, then turned around and left without any hesitation. Tokyo is really dangerous. It seems like there are murderers on the run every week. The bearded man, with a strange accent in Japanese, waved his hand as if gesturing for him to follow. Casually pulling on a jacket, Baichuan felt his heart about to jump out of his throat. Although he traveled to Conan's world, his previous interactions with Tiger Warehouse and others gave him the illusion that he was just in a world with extremely scarce game resources, and even had the idea of using games to bring a smile to the world. The door of Qin Wine shattered all illusions and made him realize clearly that this was a world that could cause death at any time. If there is even the slightest mistake in my current response, I may lose my life directly. Sitting on the passenger seat of the off-road vehicle in a daze, the car was driven out for a long time before Baichuan regained his ability to think. Looking through the rearview mirror at the cold and fierce-looking Qin sitting in the back row, he suddenly felt a strong sense of discord in his heart. What seems to be wrong? The height of this body is 1.83 meters, and the driver is much taller than him, at least 1.9 meters. But the height of Qin is nearly 20 centimeters shorter than that of the driver. In other words, Qin is 1.7 meters tall. Bombing trains, buildings, and strafing the Tokyo Tower, all sorts of atrocities are committed, and the bloody and brutal Qin Sauce is only 1.7 meters long. The more I thought about it, the more Baichuan felt that the situation was a bit strange. Qin beloved car is the Porsche 356A, but the car he drove today was an off-road vehicle he didn't know at all, and Qin himself didn't stick it to the passenger seat. Vodka should be a short and sturdy man with a square face and no beard, just like the man with a big beard and a buttocks like Qin in front of him. Is it possible that I made a mistake? These two are not actually from a distillery. But the zither wine is exactly the same as the zither wine in his memory. By the way, after going through the various wines that had already appeared in his mind, he suddenly realized that there was actually a strong bearded man with a strange accent at the distillery. The first unlucky guy to be killed in an episode at the distillery. Tequila. Why does Agave die? Because of a list of programmers. So who is responsible for coordinating the recruitment of programmers? What kind of company is Naidu Electronics Company, Limited? Baichuan's mouth twitched, as if he understood something. The taste of Qin wine is so bad. Someone who relies on their ability to change their appearance may have put in a lot of effort in the dark. Wait. Perhaps this is the reason why the relationship between Qin and Belmaud is very poor. Shirakawa suddenly realized that Jin was very disgusted by Belmaud's disguise, but due to the boss's request, he could only pretend not to know. Sitting alone in a corner sulking, he almost burst into laughter. At this moment, Beijia naturally didn't know that her identity had already been exposed in front of a certain traveler. She still said in a cold voice like that of Jin, "Did you have a guest there just now?" "It's from the company," Baichuan quickly replied. He was unsure of the current situation and didn't know what his relationship with the organization was, so he was prepared to answer truthfully as long as it didn't involve any questions about travel. Although Belmaud is a bottle of fake wine, according to the current time, it will take a whole year for Beijia to meet her angel in New York and start favoring Kudo Shinichi. Perhaps some water has been added now, but the purity is at least 90% or above. If you say anything, you might end up getting shot in one shot. How does it feel to have control over the entire company? Sure enough. Knowing that there was a younger brother who had broken his legs while racing, Shirakawa felt that the reason behind his successful rise to power was not simple, but he did not expect that there would be operations from a distillery behind it. Feeling. Actually, it's not as pleasant as imagined. Baichuan touched his chin and truthfully explained his feelings. Hutsong Gingping has even stronger control over the company than I imagined, and can directly issue orders beyond me. The company's current situation is also very poor, and it has reached the point of survival. Is that why you gave up on researching new machines? Ah. Belmaud's cold words startled and angered Shirakawa. Isn't that machine a prop for a certain case? Why is it still related to the organization? And it has only been half an hour since he had this idea, and the distillery immediately became aware of it and directly came to warn him. What does this mean? It means that one of the three people just now is the eyeliner of the organization. Who could it be? Matsuda. Or ship guidance. Although his mind was full of thoughts, Baichuan did not forget to give a reasonable explanation. No, I have never given up on the idea. However, my reputation in the company is not enough to suppress Tiger Warehouse, so I can only stabilize him by pretending to agree, otherwise it may interfere with our plan. In fact, since getting on the car, Shirakawa has had a rough guess about his identity. He is highly likely to be the white glove of the distillery, with the obligation to provide funding, experiment with new products, and may also be tasked with recruiting talent for program development. This kind of identity has its pros and cons, and does not involve many formal members, which means that the probability of being targeted by the red side is low and will not be inexplicably targeted. But we must consider the situation where the rabbit dies and the dog cooks. The distillery will never be lenient in shooting its own people. Within 2 years, the machine must be researched and put into use, and at least 200,000 test data must be obtained. You should know the consequences of failure, right? No problem. Shirakawa almost made a promise by patting his chest, as 2 years later would be the first year of Conan's infinite extension of time. Isn't the duration of this mission equivalent to infinity? According to this idea, can I get some money from the distillery? What kind of repayment will be made 2 years later? Me also, Lam asked me to convey to you that the next assessment will provide 5 billion yuan in funding within 2 years. 5 billion. Shirakawa almost sprayed a mouthful of water onto the front windshield. He originally planned to gather some wool from the organization, but instead, he ended up being prostituted for free. Isn't it forced to ask him to provide 5 billion yuan in funds when the kidnapping and extortion are only a few tens of millions, and the robbery of 1 billion yuan is a major malignant case? I am not the kind of tycoon like Suzuki Corporation who can easily come up with billions of dollars. Belmore's purpose in summoning him this time seems to be only these 2 points. At the next intersection, Baichuan was mercilessly driven off the car. Walking on unfamiliar streets, he began to ponder the pros and cons of this matter. As the second in command of the organization, it is unlikely that Lam will release an extremely difficult task to peripheral members for no reason, and as Belmore himself said, this is an assessment. The most likely assessment is to become a formal member. Is it worth 5 billion yen to change the name of a wine? There was never an answer, so Shirakawa decided to think about other things. The development of game consoles needs to continue, but games cannot be ignored, so Gal game may really be a good way out. Are you the son of President Du? The gentle male voice in front of him made Shirakawa look up and quickly found 2 familiar strangers in the crowd. Yuzua Kudo and his son Shinichi Kudo, who was full of dissatisfaction. Front foot distillery, back foot Conan, or the Conan Plus version, I wish I could die. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Misses of Red and Black. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Misses of Red and Black. Mr. Yuzhuo, I really trouble you with my father's matter. Shirakawa saluted Kudo Yuzhuo very formally. Since I can meet this busy person who has been honeymooning with my wife all year round in Japan, most of the cases that occurred in Tokyo during this period are related to this person. In addition, with the just mentioned title, it is self-evident who the passing detective who solved the murder case of Narazazu was. No, Dujuan was my classmate in middle school, so it's my duty to let him rest in peace. Do you still have such a relationship with my father? Then I should call you Uncle Yozua. Where? 2 unfamiliar people chatted awkwardly for a few moments, but couldn't find a good starting point. Shirakawa could only watch as Kudo Shinichi, who had half a month's eye, stiffened and tried to shift the topic. Is this your son? He's such a talented person. He must also be an excellent writer in the future. No, my dream is to become a detective like Sherlock Holmes. Kudo Shinichi, who is still a junior high school student, is obviously more immature than the high school detective who gained fame later on. Without hesitation, he pointed at Shirakawa confidently and said. The coat on this uncle's body has many wrinkles and carries a smell of incense, which is rarely used except in funeral homes. The pocket of the coat has square marks, which should be the salt distributed at the funeral. The clothes and pants are completely different. Perhaps something happened and he hurriedly put on a piece of clothing to go out, but accidentally got the clothes that had not been cleaned after attending the funeral. Looking at Shinichi Kudo, who was serious in his reasoning, Shirakawa, with a black face, reached out and vigorously rubbed his head. What a sharp little one. Child. I was not even 30 years old in my previous life, and now I am only 19 years old. What makes you call yourself an uncle if you have a handsome face that meets the standards of the world, and pretend to be Shinichi Kudo without makeup? However, according to Shinichi Kudo's words, Shirakawa also understands why Yuzua Kudo insisted on finding himself to engage in some awkward conversation. From his clothes to his mental state, he must have given people a feeling of despair now, which has made a detective smell the atmosphere of the event. Unfortunately, the two of them arrived one step late, and those guys from the distillery had long disappeared without a trace. The collision between Red and Black 2 years ahead of schedule is one street away. The sales of the company's newly released games are very poor, and there have been certain issues with funds. The matter of borrowing from a third party just now is unlikely to have any further developments. Watching the top game production companies in the industry decline step by step, I sigh. Baichuan's tone was low, his eyes filled with sadness and pain, and he unleashed his few acting skills to the extreme. How to deal with a detective who is very curious? It's simple, answer his questions truthfully, don't make any deceptive moves, wait for him to think he understands the process of the matter and leave satisfied. Shirakawa's words significantly relaxed the already tense nerves of the father and son. Kudo Shinichi is a rare start roast. So that game, Kung Fu All-Star, is yours. Although adding a storyline as a beginner's guide in fighting games is a good idea, there must be some issues with your data settings. It's so difficult for beginners to guide, who would want to play it? Looking at a game idiot chatting, Baichuan only hates his phone being the most basic PHS without recording function, otherwise he must record this scene and play it repeatedly at the wedding of Stinky Detective and Xiaoan. The most criticized aspect of the new game is that its combat moves have too obvious backsway, and the invincible frames it avoids are too long, resulting in a completely disproportionate effort required for attack and defense. It has formed a mischievous combination of avoiding counterattacks, leading to a significant decline in gameplay. But it is precisely this game, which caused sales to skyrocket due to its simplicity, that has become a natural barrier for beginners to navigate in the mouth of Shinichi Kudo. This has to make people sigh, the savior of the Japanese police, the Super Mickey figure of the football satellite explosion, is actually a disabled party. I will seriously consider your suggestion and strive to make improvements in the next game. The appearance that Shirakawa valued quickly won the favor of Shinichi Kudo, and his title changed from uncle to Shirakawa's brother. But at this moment, Shirakawa's thoughts were no longer on this middle school student who had no wool to pick up. Mr. Yozua, have you ever heard of Galgame games? Yuzua Kudo clearly did not expect to suddenly ask himself a question, ponder for a moment, and shake his head to indicate that he had never heard of it. I seem to have heard classmates mention it before, but I can't remember exactly what it is. Commonly known as Pretty Girl Game, it is a game that claims to be in love but actually comes with certain prohibited elements. The father and son fell into a long silence, clearly not understanding the reason for the sudden mention of this issue. How about setting the theme of this game as detective reasoning? Detective reasoning. The two still didn't understand exactly what Shirakawa wanted to express. Yes, for example, changing the male protagonist of a love game to a detective, changing the trainable characters to suspects, changing the dialogue option to investigate the crime scene, and ultimately changing the love scene to solve the case. Shirakawa expresses his ideas in the simplest language possible. In the situation where the development of game consoles could not be stopped, there was not much funds available for the development of new games, so Matsuda's wholeheartedly proposed gameplay game returned to his vision. When it comes to gameplay, the first thing that comes to mind is undoubtedly famous masterpieces such as Fate's Stone Gate, Saya's Song, and Ever 17, but unfortunately, he has never played any of these games. On the contrary, he has a profound research on games such as the Dark Bible, the Pretty Girl's Fantasy Mirror, and the Flame Pregnancy Academy. To create this kind of game is like what Hutsang Genpei said, which is to trample on the company's face on the ground. Even overcoming the current crisis is detrimental to the future development of the company. Therefore, he needs a gameplay that he is familiar with and does not contain 18 forbidden elements. The initially envisioned game was White Album 2. Although this game was banned for 18 years, it also achieved great success in the form of anime after removing the indescribable content, indicating that even if the color plot is removed, it will not significantly affect the quality of the game itself. However, after seeing the father and son of Kudo, he dispelled such thoughts. If I remember correctly, Gangchang Aoyama seems to be a childhood sweetheart, with Yuzua Kudo and Yukiko Yoshiko, Shinichi Kudo, and Ran Mori representing the ultimate success of childhood sweethearts. If you want to play the game of Qin being defeated by the heavens in this world, and not to mention whether it can be successful, may the company have to be visited by the Grim Reaper hundreds of times during production. After denying the founder of Bai Shui, he gained new inspiration from his identity as Yuzua Kudo. Why not just play a mystery game? What does reasoning mean in the world of science? Using an inappropriate analogy is equivalent to the position of political correctness in the United States, where anything that is related to reasoning is almost unstoppable with a green light all the way. The production is simple, the audience is wide, and as long as the content is not bad, the sales are definitely not bad with the enthusiasm for reasoning in this world. That's a great idea. Shinichi Kudo's eyes lit up. For someone like him who enjoys playing games, wouldn't it be twice as enjoyable to play a game with a reasoning theme and simple controls? But at the same time, he also had some doubts. Detectives have very strict requirements for reasoning. If there are logical errors in the game, it is estimated that the sales will be even worse than the current game. Has your company conducted research in this area before? That's why I want to ask Mr. Yuzua Kudo for help. Shirakawa casually requested, if possible, I would like to invite both of you to dinner. Thank you for allowing my father's ghost to rest and discussing the matter of the reasoning game. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Death comes to the door, kill now, click now. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Death comes to the door, kill now, click now. It happened to be dinner time now, and the hungry and interested father and son of Kudo agreed to Shirakawa's invitation without much hesitation. Under the leadership of Yuzua Kudo, the three of them came to the Japanese-style restaurant where he and the screenwriters gathered to discuss a new work. The prices here were slightly higher than those of similar stores, but the privacy was excellent. It was one of the few restaurants with independent private rooms, making it perfect for discussing work. For such necessary expenses, Shirakawa naturally won't save. With a wave of his hand, he directly ordered a super invincible luxury package of 100,000 yen per person in the store, and specially chose the set with a lot of fish for Kudo Shinichi. Unfortunately, the famous detective and the thief only look like twins and do not share the same weaknesses. After 3 rounds of wine, tea, and 5 flavors of dishes, Yoshitaka Kudo wiped the corners of his mouth with a tissue and spoke confidently. I am very interested in the proposal for the game, Detective Shirakawa Jun. I don't know if there is anything I can help with. Apart from purchasing the novel copyright, I can be the owner of everything else. After all, he is a world-renowned mystery novel writer, and Yosuke Kudo is very aware of his influence and the sensation that will be caused when news of his novels being adapted into games spreads. This is definitely the quickest solution to get the struggling Naidu Electronics Company, Limited back on track. But the risk is also not small. The production of detective games is still an unknown field, and if the final effect cannot be recognized by the public, it will be a huge blow to both parties involved in the cooperation. And he also does not believe that with the current situation of Naidu Electronics Company, Limited, a special fund can be allocated to purchase the copyright. Even if he is willing to sell at a low price, other stakeholders will definitely not agree. No, I have no such idea at all. Shirakawa put down his chopsticks and said solemnly, creating a detective game in the form of game is a big gamble, and no one is sure if the outcome will be as expected. The cost of trial and error with world-renowned excellent works may be too heavy. So what are you going to do? When I was studying abroad in the UK, I heard a classmate tell a story. Baichuan raised his eyes slightly, stroked his chin, and while organizing his speech, he spoke. The protagonist of the story is a famous detective's grandson who is in high school, and the incident takes place in a village called Liujiao Village. On this day, a white bone was excavated from the barren mountain behind the village. According to forensic testing, the deceased was a male, aged 25.30, and buried for more than a year, which can be confirmed as a murder case. This seemingly endless murder case has led to a major case of over 10 deaths. Conan's world has Polo and Sherlock Holmes, and it is naturally impossible to plagiarize these classics. But there are only Poirot and Holmes here. White Knight Journey, The Devotion of Suspect X, The Magpie Murder, The Owl Murder. As long as Shirakawa is willing, he can become a detective fiction writer who surpasses Yosuke Kudo in just a few minutes. It's just that doing this is meaningless. Is it because someone who is completely ignorant of reasoning suddenly writes a world-shaking masterpiece of reasoning, or is it because they are adhering to the principle of reasoning and learning from the world? Think of those writers who were beheaded, dismembered, hanged, and poisoned for plagiarism. But using it to play games is different. Most ordinary gamers do not really delve into the planners of the game plot. The probability of their exposure is already low, and they even attribute the story to a non-existent classmate. Can a world consciousness really construct a person who seeks their own remuneration? It roughly tells the story of the protagonist discovering an incomplete corpse in each museum collection, as well as the first unlucky person to die. Shirakawa stopped and looked at the contemplative Yuzo Kudo with a hopeful expression. He introduced the murder case in the alien mansion in another famous Japanese detective manga, Kaneda Yonan Investigation Book, which is on par with Conan. This is the most memorable case for Shirakawa, with a profound portrayal of human nature. The way the deceased died was also more and more bizarre, and the two timelines combined resulted in nearly 20 deaths. It can be said that they were completely insane. At the same time, this case is also the one he believes is the easiest to adapt into a game, whether it is a strategic SLG or a text-based adventure TAVG, which are both quite good choices. If we could hand over the details of this case to a renowned detective writer to fill in, we would probably get a more exquisite and perfect case than the original version. What happened later? This should be a case related to revenge, right? The most likely culprit is, Kudo Shinichi was obviously addicted to it and couldn't wait to ask further questions, with a posture of competing with the detective in the story. Yuzo Kudo also nodded, acknowledging the excellent suspense design of this story and taking the initiative to ask. What do I need to do? Do you think there are flaws in the modus operandi that need to be filled, or do you think the case resolution does not meet the requirements of intrinsic reasoning and needs improvement? Tear off a piece of white paper and write down the phone number of Hutsong Ginping on it. Actually, this story is quite complete. At least I couldn't see anything wrong from it, but I still need your help to check if there are any logical loopholes. As for the complete script, you can contact Mr. Hutsong and come to the company at any time. Ah! The screams that echoed through the sky interrupted the two people in heated discussions. Shirakawa, who had never seen such a battle before, was somewhat shocked, while Kudo and his son had already transformed into two remnants and rushed out of the private room. Staring blankly at the empty room, Shirakawa put the remaining fried shrimp into his mouth. Death really knocks on your door, just click and kill now. This meal is obviously impossible to continue, with a set meal of 100,000 yuan per person. He wasted at least half of his 300,000 yuan, my little money. How could I not have thought of letting the first Grim Reaper choose a restaurant at that time? Although he had some regrets in his heart, Shirakawa still kept up with the pace of the two detectives as quickly as possible. Encountering an event was actually not a bad thing for him. Following Kudo and his son closely, his first point of death energy finally found a way. At this moment, there were already many people standing around the cash register, and on the ground was a middle-aged man in his 50s with sparse hair on his head. Next to the man stood two men and one woman, three companions with anxious expressions. Choose one out of three, it shouldn't be a big deal. With over 1,000 episodes of Conan's experience, Shirakawa quickly concluded that the current case was just an ordinary one that occurred in Tokyo, and it is estimated that the case will not take too long to be solved. Yuzwa Kudo's investigative style is very different from that of a detective in Shirakawa's impression. He just stood on the side, lowered his head and pondered, without examining the cause of death or touching the body, forming a sharp contrast with a middle school student wandering around. Of course, Shinichi Kudo was not able to jump for too long and was quickly kicked out by a tall and thin man with dark skin. This man has been squatting beside the deceased, both protecting the scene and inspecting the body with great precision, clearly an experienced hand. Public security. Or is it a police officer on vacation? About 5 minutes later, the tall and thin man stood up straight, took out a police officer's certificate from his shirt pocket, and said to the hurried restaurant manager. "I am Mitsuchi Mito, a police officer from Nagano Prefecture. We will immediately block the scene and prohibit anyone from leaving. At the same time, we will seal the private rooms used by the deceased and their companions. This is a premeditated murder case." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Poisoning or Heart Disease. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Poisoning or Heart Disease. Isn't the president having a heart attack? The police officer named Mitsuchi Mito firmly concluded that it was murder, which made the three companions of the deceased look even more frightened. The only woman who tried a few times finally mustered the courage to ask. "No, that's just an illusion." The Mito police officer was extremely confident. He pointed to a seat not far behind the left side of the cashier and said, "There, I was sitting there. Due to the angle, I could clearly see the situation at the time of the crime. The deceased suddenly collapsed during checkout, and due to a heart attack, it seems that he also drank alcohol. Therefore, his colleagues who were with him, the three of you, believed that it was a heart attack." The glasses guy took out the quick-acting heart-saving pill from the victim's shirt pocket in an attempt to provide first aid, but by the time the cashier retrieved drinking water, it was already too late. "I'm right. That's right." The three suspects nodded in confusion, as if they couldn't believe anyone could reconstruct the situation so clearly. "The situation seems to be like this, but you have all overlooked the most important issue." The affirmation of the three of them gave the police officer great encouragement, and even their voices sounded more confident. "May I ask what profession the deceased engaged in?" Is this related to the case?" "He is our president. Tachibana Company, Limited is a company responsible for selling medical devices." Among the three, except for the man with a bandage on his forehead who still had some doubts, the remaining two had trust in the police officer to the point of answering every question. "So did the deceased have the habit of licking their fingers when counting money?" "I see. This police officer has something." After all, he was a person who had been influenced by Conan for over 1,000 episodes, and Shirakawa quickly understood the method of committing the crime. The killer applied poison to the deceased's fingers in advance, and when the deceased instinctively licked their fingers because they needed to pay for the bill, all the tricks in the case were completed. As for the killer, he must be one of these three people, which is also the reason why the police officer requested to block the private room. Aren't all the police officers in Conan world intellectually disabled, except for the 5-member squad of the police academy? Where is this amazing character from? Has it ever appeared in anime? Just as Shirakawa lamented that the Tokyo police were not all useless, Shinichi Kudo pulled his sleeve with a strange expression, giving him a feeling of idle disillusionment. You don't think that guy's flawed reasoning is the truth, do you? Ah, isn't it? Shirakawa was even more shocked. He felt that the police's reasoning was quite perfect, perfectly matched, without any loopholes. How could it be that Kudo Shinichi's mouth was full of flaws? What poison do you think can kill someone in just a few seconds? Kudo Shinichi asked softly. Is this still a question? Of course it's cyanide. Wait, you seem to have approached the corpse just now. 9 out of 10 poisoning cases in the world of science are related to this type of poison that is difficult to obtain in reality. And it seems that everyone here can smell the smell of cyanide, and it must be bitter almond flavor. Yes, but at that time I didn't smell what I should have smelled. Although it may have been too short of time, at least it indicates that it's too early to draw a conclusion about poisoning. And the position of his right hand is also a bit strange. Following Kudo Shinichi's finger, Shirakawa looked for a long time and found nothing except that he was indeed a reasoning idiot. The deceased's left hand drooped, while the right hand tightly grasped the chest. If it was licking the poison on the fingers, the first reaction of the body before falling down would definitely be to cover the neck, so tightly grasping the chest would be more like a heart attack. However, although the cause of death still needs to be diagnosed by professionals before it can be determined, it can be seen from that point that this is a murder case and there is no wrong statement that little bit. Which point? Looking at this stinky junior high school student, Baichuan couldn't help but reach out and vigorously rub his hair. Have you ever heard a saying called "Riddle man get out of Gotham City"? Ah. Do you know that your style of speaking only half the way is easy to be beaten to death? Under the coercion of Shirakawa's military force, Shinichi Kudo could only sigh helplessly. I thought your reasoning ability was at least on par with mine, and the result was that money is money. Watching his sinful hand reach out to him again, Shinichi quickly explained. There is a problem with the scattered marks on the banknotes on the ground. If this man directly took out money from his pocket and poured it down, the banknotes would definitely have scattered all over the ground. But now, you see, the banknotes are almost neatly placed on the ground by workers. And the banknotes are also too new. If the deceased took money out of their pocket, these banknotes would have at least some creases even if they were just taken out of the bank, but the coins on the ground have no such marks at all. It is very likely that the banknotes we see are not the part held by the deceased during their lifetime, but someone took advantage of the chaos just now to complete the exchange, and the murder mechanism may also be hidden in the previous banknotes. I see. Shirakawa, who had never experienced the crime scene before, also exclaimed at this moment that he had learned. As for being questioned about his reasoning ability by Shinichi Kudo, he doesn't care at all. He leaves professional matters to professional people to handle, and he is just a rascal who rubs against the power of death. Not long after, an old acquaintance, Officer Mumu, arrived at the scene of the crime with a team of police officers. The plump police officer spotted the silent Yuzua Kudo in the crowd at a glance. Brother Yozua, today is our second time meeting, isn't it? After teasing the first-generation Grim Reaper with a slanted gaze, Mumu finally noticed the Nagano Prefectural Police who was standing in position C but had been ignored for a long time. Oh, aren't you the Koichi guy from Nagano Prefecture? I didn't expect to meet you here. Are you on vacation? I really envy the police officers who have holidays. As Mumu spoke, his gaze glanced intentionally or unintentionally at Yuzua Kudo again, as if accusing a plague god who caused them to work overtime all year round. Officer Mu, this is a very insidious murder case, the victim. Mizuwa Koichi, who had not seen the causal ability of the Kudo family, naturally did not understand the profound meaning contained in Mumu's words. He repeated his reasoning and proposed the possibility of poisoning. As one of the few reliable police officers in Tokyo, Momo still had a good demeanor when he entered the investigation stage. Takagi, report the situation at the scene, he said. Yes, Police Officer Takagi immediately replied. The deceased, Hirofu Shijima, 52 years old, is the president of Tachibana Company, Limited. He gathers with important members of the company every Friday. Today, it seems that he has decided to hold a temporary gathering because he received a large order. The specific cause of death may require forensic autopsy to determine, but an examination of the deceased's right-hand finger has revealed no evidence of carrying toxins. No. Mito Koichi's face was full of shock, as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Officer Mu, who was originally full of confidence and believed that the case would be closed soon, sighed helplessly. Where there is Yosua's younger brother, cases are always full of twists and turns, making people confused. Mito Mitsuchi, Nagano Prefectural Criminal Police Officer, first appeared in TV 204 episode Black Icarus Wings. An original anime character who served as a tool for Conan in Nagano Prefecture until a group of people from Yamato Kensuke were painted by Aoyama. The reason why I used it as a supporting role was that I was very handsome and had the taste of a black leather white bird police officer. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Father-Son Bureau Teaching Bureau. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Father-Son Bureau Teaching Bureau. Without the most important evidence, the reasoning of poisoning naturally fails. Therefore, the Mu police officer can only start questioning according to the general process of a case, and the inference of the cause of death is more inclined towards accidents. The president is a very good person who takes work seriously and treats subordinates gently. He often pays for company employees' meals and travels at his own expense. This time, the representative of Makino received a large order, which should be treated by him according to convention, but the president is also the one who is rushing to pay. The president has a very loving wife who passed away 5 years ago without leaving any children. As a result, the president regards the company as his last refuge, living and eating in the company, and has hardly ever returned home. The president used to enjoy gambling on horses, but since he was diagnosed with a heart disease, he has never been to the live broadcast again, and even if it's broadcasted, he doesn't watch much. However, his drinking habit has never stopped. Under the testimony of the three, the image of President Shirajima gradually became full. It seems like a person who is not easy to form enemies with and doesn't have any bad habits. So the possibility of accidental death is a bit higher. After listening to the narration, Mu was basically certain that it was an accident in his heart, but out of respect for the first generation of death gods, he still added. However, the possibility of poisoning cannot be completely ruled out. The three of you should take me to the private room where you dined before and have the forensic personnel check your personal belongings. The private room where the deceased dined was identical to the one used by Shirakawa and his team, except for a different location. All kinds of food in the room were consumed, and the possibility of poisoning the food was basically ruled out. Then check and examine the personal belongings of the three companions of the deceased again. If there are no issues, close the case as accidental. 2 forensic personnel were left to continue testing for toxin reactions. Momo returned to the hall with Sato and others, as well as Kudo and his son who had infiltrated at an unknown time, waiting for Takagi's report. Mr. Ekizan, who has band-aids on his head, only has 2 candies, a pack of tissues, and a string of keys on his body. Mr. Makino, who wears glasses, has a car key, cigarette, lighter, electronic watch, and bank card on his body. Miss Nishizaki has lipstick, a lady's cigarette, and a wallet. In her wallet, apart from the banknotes, there is only a photo of her with her boyfriend. Looking at the items that were not even 1/3 full on the table, Sato couldn't help but wonder and say, although these things may not seem to contain toxins, are you carrying too little when you go out? Because the company is located in the opposite building, in order to complete the new order, we have to stay up late tonight to contact the source of goods. Therefore, we just come out for a meal and then go back, so naturally we don't need to bring too many things. Ms. Nishizaki's explanation is also understandable. In this situation, the culprit must be that woman. The culprit should be Miss Nishizaki, but how did she actually kill President Shirajima? The voices of Shirakawa and Shinichi Kudo sounded almost simultaneously, although neither of them was loud enough for each other to hear. Looking at the determined future Japanese police savior with a determined expression on his face, and then at the still pondering Yuzua Kudo, Shirakawa gestured with both hands as he closed the door and asked. Xiaoxin, have you heard the sound of the door closing with a bang, and then opening with a squeak? Kudo Shinichi's half-moon eyes said, what kind of nonsense are you talking about? There's no door here. Also, don't give me any strange nicknames. Okay, they probably both got it wrong. Without the door opening and closing, the progress bar has not yet reached halfway, and the reasoning at this point is likely to be smoke bombs released by the screenwriter. In addition, Yuzua Kudo is still thinking about it, so this is probably a teaching game where the father educates his son. I inferred that Ms. Nishizaki is suspected based on her wallet, and what are you based on? It tells a logically complete reasoning story, but lacks the most basic reasoning ability of observing the scene. As a result, the speed of identifying the culprit is almost the same as his own, which makes Kudo Shinichi even more curious about Shirakawa, who is full of contradictions all over his body. Coincidentally, I also discovered the problem from my wallet. Shirakawa is happy. Based on his experience, most people who keep photos in their wallets are people with stories, and 90% of the stories will evolve into the motive for murder in the case. Coupled with the mnemonic of 2 men and 1 woman choosing a woman, the true culprit of the case is actually easy to determine. However, the mnemonic seems to have failed this time. Did you also notice that only Ms. Nishizaki's long wallet can store brand new banknotes? And she just specifically pointed out that President Shirajima has a hobby of gambling on horses and a habit of drinking, which seems to be guiding the investigation direction. Her behavior is indeed very suspicious. Can I say it's completely different? Baichuan awkwardly scratched his head, inferring so much from a wallet that it was difficult for a certain junior high school student. Do you know the method of the crime? Also, where do you think the evidence will be? No matter how Shirakawa determined the culprit, since both of them believe that Miss Nishizaki is suspected, they should naturally check the answer. I really don't know about this. If Kudo Shinichi wants to get the answer right, then Shirakawa really needs to do the question. Comparing the answer to someone who relies solely on deception may not yield a result in this lifetime. In that case, let's close this case as an accident. Confirming that none of the items on the 3 individuals carried any toxins, Officer Mu waved his hand and prepared to withdraw from the team. Yuzua Kudo, who had been fishing for almost 2 chapters, finally took action. Officer Mu, I think we should wait for the results of the autopsy before making a decision. Oh. Brother Yozua, do you have any new discoveries? Mumu, who had long been accustomed to this kind of scene, turned around and returned to the table where various objects were placed, as if the person who had just said the team was not him at all. Don't worry, we'll wait until the autopsy results come out. Also, could you please help me inquire with the forensic personnel? As an old Riddler, Yuzua Kudo's voice became increasingly low, and even though Shirakawa tried to distinguish, he couldn't hear what he had whispered to Momo. 10 minutes later, a police officer hurriedly walked into the restaurant, holding several sheets of paper that clearly had just been printed with an ink smell. Officer, the test results have been released, but the deceased showed signs of a heart attack, but the real cause of death was cyanide poisoning. What? X3-inch The test result left everyone present feeling a bit confused, especially the Mito police officer who was completely denied his reasoning and fell into a state of autism. He jumped up excitedly and questioned. Where's the poison? Have you found out how it was poisoned? Cyanide residue was detected in the deceased's oral cavity, but there was no toxin reaction in other parts of the body. The specific method of poisoning is still uncertain. Even the autopsy did not reveal how the killer poisoned him. This is undoubtedly more shocking than the inspection results. When I say, Yozua brother, don't be too close. Who is the culprit? Officer Mu couldn't help but bite his teeth and asked. In such a situation, Yuzua Kudo still pondered for a full minute before answering. As the most crucial piece of evidence has not yet been disclosed, I cannot guarantee the accuracy of my reasoning, but if nothing unexpected happens, the culprit is Mr. Makino. That's right. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Eating Uneducated Losses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Eating Uneducated Losses, what evidence do you have for saying that? Miss Nishizaki was very puzzled and asked with a hint of anger, Makino is a company elder promoted by the president. What reason does he have to kill the president? Faced with Miss Nishizaki's questioning, Yuzua Kudo made a downward pressure with both hands, indicating that she should not get excited. I didn't see the case happen with my own eyes, but according to the description just now, the deceased is suspected of having a heart attack. The three immediately took emergency measures, but unfortunately it was one step late, and you also judged it as accidental death. As for the police officer, it was determined as poisoning based on the deceased's licking of their fingers, right? That's right. Several people nodded at the same time, which was basically consistent with the situation at the time of the crime. Is there a possibility that President Shirajima had a heart attack before being poisoned? It shouldn't be possible. Mito Guan, who had regained some confidence, frowned and spoke up, how did the killer cause the deceased to suddenly have a heart attack? Even if he drank alcohol, it was impossible to guarantee that he would suddenly fall ill right in front of the cashier. Is it possible to pin the success or failure of the murder plan on luck? I understand. A lightning bolt flashed past Kudo Shinichi's head, seemingly clearing his thoughts from the complex events. It is not wrong to speculate that the paper currency has been replaced before, but what is hidden in the paper currency is not a murder device, but a note that President Shirajima saw enough to have a heart attack. Almost at the same time, Yuzua Kudo also gave the answer. That note probably said something like, today's big order was specially forged to deceive you. It's not surprising that President Shijima's heart rate accelerates under emotional excitement, combined with the dual stimulation of alcohol, leading to a heart attack. But this still doesn't explain how the killer poisoned it. Mitsuchi Mito continued to ask, even if the deceased had a heart attack first and was poisoned by someone, there must be tools for poisoning, and the venom cannot have grown its own feet and ran into the president's mouth. This time, Yuzua Kudo did not answer the question and instead looked at Mr. Makino with glasses and asked. Mr. Makino, since just now, you have been putting your left hand in your pants pocket. Even if you take out personal items from your body, it seems like you only used your right hand. Is it because there is a secret hidden in your left hand? How could that happen? Makino quickly withdrew his left hand from his pocket and flipped it back and forth in front of everyone, indicating that he had nothing on his hand. He even flipped his pants pocket outward to prove his innocence. Officer Mu, please check Mr. Makino's left finger and inside of his pocket. If there are no accidents, residual poison should be found on it. Ah! Upon hearing these words, Makino stood frozen in place, with large drops of sweat rolling down his forehead. His left hand, held in mid-air, couldn't help but tremble. Judging from this posture, there is probably no need for inspection. The killer did not apply poison to any part of the deceased's body, but applied it to his own hands. While opening President Shijima's mouth and putting the quick-acting heart-saving pill inside, he synchronously placed his left finger into President Shijima's mouth and waited for him to swallow the poison naturally, thus completing the murder plan. Yuzua Kudo's voice was slow, deep but with an undeniable power, and at that moment his words were the truth. Officer, we have detected residual venom on Mr. Makino's thumb, index finger, and middle finger, and there is also a weak toxin reaction on the inside of his pocket. Everyone looked at Mr. Makino with a shocked expression. Is it really him? Officer, you must have misunderstood. After all, I put my hand into the president's mouth at the time, and it's not surprising that I got some poison, right? Although his forehead was covered in sweat, the little brother Makino still seemed ready to struggle. And I don't have a device that can store poison on me, and you said I exchanged the money that the president dropped on the ground. So where did that money go? I only have a bank card on me. Makino's speaking speed became faster and faster, as if he wanted to increase his persuasiveness, but unfortunately, even the reasoning novice Shirakawa could easily find loopholes in his argument. At the end of the meal, find a way to go to the restroom and wipe the poison on your hands. Then, just throw the container containing the poison directly into the restroom. If it's a sealed bag style, it's even better to flush it away with water. How can this be called evidence? Moreover, it's clear that the residual amount of venom on your hands is even greater. Why? Are you a close relative of the magnet, the medicine magnet? The type that can automatically absorb poison? Shirakawa murmured. Roast. Assuming that the prisoner had to exchange all the banknotes in order to hide the notes carried in the deceased's banknotes, where would he choose to hide the banknotes in a very short period of time? Faced with Makino's rebuttal, Yuzua Kudo did not refute the completely untenable evidence one by one, as if talking to himself, but also seemingly asking a question. Put it into the victim's pocket while taking the quick-acting heart-saving pill. Shinichi Kudo was the first to react. Later, the Mito police officer suddenly realized, yes, put down the money and then take out the medicine bottle. The whole process was done in one go, and outsiders couldn't even see the small movements in your hand. Mr. Kudo just mentioned that the evidence should be the result of fingerprint identification. Although it is difficult to detect fingerprints on banknotes due to the large number of users, it is only possible that there are fingerprints of you and the deceased on that note. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Makino took off his glasses and slowly leaned back in his chair, admitting his guilt. It was my hand that moved. Why? The president is so kind to you. Why kill him? Miss Nishizaki collapsed and spoke, unable to believe that the two good gentlemen in her eyes would harm each other to such an extent. My mother is sick, I need to go back to my hometown Saitama to take care of her, and may not come back to Tokyo, so I asked the president to resign, but Shirajima, the bastard who values the company more than anything, refused my request, and said that I am the gold medal sales of the company, the hen who can lay golden eggs, and can't leave anyway. I couldn't bear his attitude anymore, so I decided to find an opportunity to take him down. I pretended to sign a big order and sneaked into his office to put a note and the money in his wallet, ready to wait until Friday dinner to take action. Unfortunately, I forgot the tradition of the company treating customers when I received a large order, so I went to withdraw the money on the spot and ended up receiving only new money. What bad luck! The reason for the murder is hasty enough. Baichuan never expected to kill someone for this reason, it was really a small knife stabbing his butt. He opened his eyes. Hey, this tragic case, why can you still say such cold words without any sympathy? Shinichi Kudo couldn't help but speak. Serious expression. My mother is seriously ill and needs to be taken care of, and the president does not allow me to resign. He made the decision to kill under double pressure. Although it is pitiful, killing is killing and an indestructible sin. Isn't it? Don't your company have any legal advisors? Baichuan couldn't bear to watch anymore. He cleared his throat and looked at the bewildered medical representative in a serious scientific popularization, saying, in addition to agreeing to resign through consultation with the employer, you can also notify the employer in writing 30 days in advance. After completing the handover work within 30 days, the labor contract can be automatically terminated. Moreover, according to the actions of your president, and even meeting the clause of employers using violence, threats, or illegal restrictions on personal freedom to force workers to work, such behavior can be terminated without notice. In other words, you can even leave the resignation application on his face and go back to his hometown directly. If he still has objections, it is best to fight a lawsuit, or the kind you must win. As for killing people for this matter, I'm not sure about the legal regulations, so we can't find a lawyer to inquire about the situation before we take action. It's not too late. Under the murderous heart of Shirakawa, Makino was powerless to kneel on the ground, crying uncontrollably. The situation suddenly came to an end in the restaurant, where for some unknown reason, the sound system began to automatically play sad music. The original script is really difficult to write, so please make do with it and read it. There may be areas where intelligence is lacking and logic is not very smooth. Please include them as much as possible. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Soul of Capitalists Burning with Fury. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The soul of capitalists burning with fury. Stepping out of the restaurant, Baichuan was in a great mood. It wasn't because of a few words from him that the killer's heart was shattered, and he also pretended to be coerced in front of the future detective Shinichi Kudo. The main joy is that this meal is free and you don't have to spend a penny. Due to a heinous murder incident, the restaurant apologized by exempting everyone present from consumption and also included a half-price discount coupon. Enjoying delicious food for free, although not full, and receiving coupons, such a cost-effective transaction made Shirakawa very happy, with a slightly uplifting voice when speaking. Mr. Yozua, why don't we move on to another place? After experiencing such a sad thing, we naturally need to soothe our souls with delicious food. After sending another invitation to Yuzua Kudo, Shirakawa suddenly noticed a flickering light in the alley not far from the restaurant. The man with a band-aid on his head and a name similar to Ryoma Ekizan seems to have just walked in. After apologizing to Mr. Yozua, Shirakawa took a few steps towards the back alley and a teary conversation came to his ears. I'm planning to switch industries. I'd rather go to the streets and distribute flyers than go back to that seemingly warm and harmonious place. The woman was smoking, tears rolling down her cheeks. Today's upheaval had a significant impact on her. The accumulation of dirt and grime under the calm lake had made her lose confidence in the entire industry. It's good to change industries. I'm ready to go back to my hometown. My sister's cake shop has just opened a branch. It's time to help her when she needs help. And the man remained silent for a while, and his tone became even deeper. And my hometown is not far from Saitama Prefecture, so I can help Makino take care of him. He could no longer speak, trembling as he lit a cigarette and started smoking less proficiently. Men dare not imagine what would happen when they inform seriously ill elderly people about the murder and imprisonment in Makino. It is too heavy, and he dare not even think about it. By the way, do you want to come together? Although the cake shop doesn't make much money, there will be fewer worries. Forget it, Nishizaki had a momentary impulse, but quickly shook his head with a bitter smile. I know nothing about cooking, so I won't delay your business. Don't worry, with my beauty, even if I go to be a wine companion, I will definitely be the number one. And when it comes to alcohol tolerance, no one in the entire company can match me. No one knows the meaning behind Nishizaki's bitter smile, just like no one knows she worked as a baker before becoming a salesperson. Compared to Ekizan, who still has a home to go back to, she is a person without a home. Yes, our wine goddess is always a top talent in any industry. Seeing such a touching scene, Baichuan felt no waves in his heart, but suddenly awakened to something strange. For such a family-owned company, the death of the president is like having no leader. Gold medal employees who forged orders and committed murder were imprisoned, and the company's reputation was completely tarnished. In addition, the departure of the two key personnel in front of them. Tachibana Company, Limited estimates that it will soon be heading towards death, just like a whale slowly falling in the ocean. So do you have a chance to take the biggest bite out of it? The two people in front of him are salespeople selling medical supplies and equipment. In his previous life, he had seen a nearly identical professional, pharmaceutical representative, a group of people who serve medical personnel. The services here are not only for work, but also for providing academic materials, caring about the life issues of deans and professors, and occasionally hosting lectures or academic conferences. Even if such talents are transferred to other industries, they are still a reliable pillar of the enterprise. Whether in sales or as a secretary, they are an excellent choice. If you two don't mind, we can talk. Bai Chuan deliberately increased his footsteps to make the two of them realize his presence, and then smiled and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just feel that using this young lady's talent as a companion to drink might bury talent." "Are you the lawyer just now?" For Bai Chuan's statement just now, the two of them clearly remember it vividly, and subconsciously mistook him for a lawyer or a staff member of a law firm. "No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm also a president." Shirakawa rummaged through his shirt pocket and handed over the card with the phone number written on Genpei Hattori, which was originally intended to be handed over to Yuzuakudo. The two hesitated a bit, but still took the card and glanced at it. "Naidu Electronics Company, Limited. It seems like I've heard of it somewhere." The man looked at Shirakawa and pondered for a while before hesitating to ask, "Is it the game company that produced All-Star Fighting?" "That's right, that's our product. My name is Narazawa Shirakawa and I am the current president of the company." Shirakawa responded with a smile, "If you have played your own company's game, it will be easier to handle, and the possibility of persuasion is a bit higher. But it clearly states that the Tiger Warehouse is even flatter." "That's an elder from our company who has been feeling very confused about something recently. Coincidentally, both of you are also feeling a bit confused now, and I have a solution that can solve all of your problems." Nishizaki remained silent, but still looked up at Shirakawa seriously. "The thing is, our company's previous game had poor sales, while the new game released almost simultaneously by Man-Tian-Tang Game Company and our game received great praise. After conducting research, it was found that Man-Tian-Tang established a marketing team responsible for organizing new game launches and trial events. Under this momentum, the game immediately achieved excellent results when it was launched. Our company is also interested in learning this approach and has established a sales department, but we have not been able to find an excellent department head holding press conferences and trial games." "Wasn't that exactly your strength, Nishizaki?" Ekizun's voice was somewhat excited. Miss Nishizaki's eyes also flashed with an inexplicable expression. Compared to her sales ability, she is completely inferior to Makino, but her experience in hosting large-scale conferences and lectures is the most abundant among all. An industry that has never been exposed to before, a job that is no worse than it is now, and almost the power to decide employees on their own. At this moment, she only felt as if a piece of pie had really fallen from the sky. You don't need to answer now, you can think more about it. The same goes for this gentleman. If you are interested, please feel free to come to the address on the card and we are always waiting for your arrival." Looking at the expressions on their faces, Shirakawa understood that this order was considered successful. Recruiting two talented individuals and possibly accompanied by several equally experienced and attractive salespeople, this is almost a bottomless deal. Taking the marketing of reasoning games as an assessment, and setting up a 1-month probationary period, there will be almost no expenses in the first 2 months, and then salary will be paid based on the game's sales performance, using the money they earn to support themselves. I am simply a genius. He led the famous mystery novel writer to join the gang and paid for an expensive set meal and several senior salesmen in vain. Bai Chuan's harvest tonight can only be described by Win thoroughly, the first emperor of Qin touching the switch. And this solicitation is just an attempt. The mortality rate of the president of Kushue world has always been high. Perhaps one day, the CEO of a certain game company will be recruited. At that time, won't he be able to directly take over his power? Even if we don't encounter it, every time there is a new game launch event in Man-Tian-Tian, why don't we just drag Conan to play? Can't we just mess him up? The more he thinks about it, the more he feels that in the world of science, detectives are a resource more precious than gold. It seems best to find another time to get in touch with Kagoro Mori. Although he doesn't have fame yet, he will definitely be useful in the future. Thinking about his grand plans, Bai Chuan didn't forget to make a phone call with an antique-level smartphone. "Matsuda, bring your Galgame game proposal to the company tomorrow morning. We need to have a meeting to discuss the possibility of production." Uncle Hutsang, I will adopt Matsuda's previous suggestion for the next game. At the same time, please contact a well-known lawyer in the industry. We need to sign a contract with Mr. Yuzuakudo, and he will assist us in the upcoming game. It's interesting to see other companies suffer, but if something happens to one's own company, it's not that wonderful. I just hope I didn't call too late. In a mansion located far away in Kudo-cho, Genpei Hokura and Matsuda sat facing each other, causing an awkward atmosphere for a moment. End of this chapter. Who is the lawyer you are looking for in Chapter 10? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Who is the lawyer you are looking for in Chapter 10? Shirakawa, is it really Mr. Yuzuakudo? Early the next morning, Hutsang Ginping arrived at the doorstep of Bai Chuan's house and kept asking with excitement, without mentioning the harmonious and friendly meeting with Matsuda last night. Yes, we happened to meet yesterday and were inspired by him to create a game with detective elements. Compared to Hutsang's excitement, Bai Chuan appeared to have little energy, his eyes blurred, and he was weakly pulled into the car. After seeing off Shinichi Kudo, who was in trouble, last night, he and Yuzuakudo moved to Jujio and sat there for a long time. The process went without saying much, but they got along very happily and the cooperation was basically finalized. However, Shirakawa always felt like he had forgotten something important. When he returned home, he realized that he had already met the first-generation Grim Reaper, Yuzuakudo, and a murder had occurred, but the Grim Reaper's energy had not grown at all. This made him, who had already planned his options, happy for nothing and had to waste a lot of time rereading the book, Tasks and Benefits. This has also led to significant mental distress today. But why do we need to contact a lawyer? We're just signing a contract, there's no need to find a third party to notarize it, right? While driving, Hutsang inquired about the details of meeting with Yuzuakudo. Because there's no money. Shirakawa silently threw a big thunderbolt. I'm not planning to stop the development of motion sensing game consoles, so the company's next game can only be produced with existing funds. How much labor do you think we can offer Mr. Kudo Yosuke in this situation? Why suddenly? Before Hutsang could finish speaking, Baichuan waved his hand and interrupted him. I'll explain this to you later and answer the question first. At most, around 1 million silently calculated the company's current funds, and Hutsang Ginping gave an answer that he found difficult to speak of. Yeah. Converted to less than $10,000. Do you know how much the copyright of the novel, Dark Knight Baron, by Yoshitaka Kudo sold for? $8.5 million. Can we offer such generous terms? No, Hutsang's voice became slightly dry. So, there is only one model we want to collaborate with Mr. Kudo, which is to split the profits, pay a prepayment fee, and then pay a bonus based on a certain proportion of game sales and revenue. Baichuan took advantage of the heat and prepared to work hard to make Hutsang temporarily forget about his plan to redo game console development. This can significantly alleviate our financial pressure, but at the same time, it must also make Mr. Yozua believe that we are not deliberately lowering prices, so inviting third-party institutions to intervene is undoubtedly the best method. By the way, who is the lawyer you're looking for? Fei Yingli, Fei lawyer. Why is he an acquaintance again? And also an old acquaintance of Yuzuakudo. Baichuan frowned, his eyes shining with an inexplicable light. Is it possible that the world consciousness is playing tricks again? She's the undefeated queen of the legal world, isn't she a defense lawyer? Hutsang Ginping felt a bit aggrieved. You only said you wanted to find a well-known lawyer at the time. There is no one in Tokyo who is more famous than her. Forget it, it's also good to meet a famous lawyer. Baichuan shrugged and walked into the company building with a hint of anticipation. If we don't consider other factors, just from the perspective of character design, appearance characteristics, and character traits, the one detective Conan likes and wants to marry the most is Fei Yingli. If we could travel more than a decade earlier, we would definitely put this idea into practice. Unfortunately, it's too late to say anything now. The president, Tiger warehouse manager, consort lawyer, and Mr. Kudo have all arrived at the reception room. Mr. Kudo also brought a person I don't know, who doesn't seem easy to get along with. As soon as he walked in, he began to constantly nitpick. The sweet-looking receptionist quickly reported the current situation and harbored deep resentment towards the uninvited guy. "It's okay, it's probably the agent. I'm not quite sure if Mr. Kudo is working with us, so come and take a look. Don't take his words to heart. Uncle Hutsang, could you please prepare a meeting for a while so that Funichi and I can meet with that agent?" During the meeting with Yuzwa Kudo, Shirakawa did not choose Genpei Hikura, but instead brought along Mitsuro Funichi, who had not had much presence since yesterday. There are his own considerations in this. There must be an undercover agent at a distillery among the three individuals of Hutsang, Matsuda, and Chuanin, with Chuanin being the most suspected. Since the winery's plan is related to sensory gaming consoles, we will never let the development of gaming consoles go beyond our control. Therefore, after Shirakawa leaves the R&D team as president, his successor is likely to be a member of the organization. However, this matter is not 100% certain, and Shirakawa's lack of keen insight makes it difficult to find the flaws on the ship's body. So he plans to lead the boat to Yuzwa Kudo for a walk. If there are really any problems, he should not be able to hide from the guy who can see through people's hearts at a glance. At this moment, in the reception room, two destined future in-laws are chatting happily. I had originally planned to decline this invitation, but I heard that the other person signing the contract was you, so I decided to come and take a look. Fei Yingli took a sip of tea, her eyes showing a hint of curiosity. She had heard Hiko complain that Yuzwa Kudo was planning to take his son to a controlled island in Hawaii for training when he returned to Japan. The original plan was to stay for about a week, but yesterday she suddenly changed her plan, which forced her to change her itinerary and fly back to Japan overnight. Although Yuzhuo has had this sudden change of plan before, most of it was due to being stuck in tricky cases and having to make changes. It is extremely rare to proactively request a change in itinerary like this. That's why Fei Yingli took on this commission, which was almost completely unrelated to her job responsibilities. She also wanted to see what kind of magic the game that made Yuzwa Kudo so interested had. That kid mentioned to me yesterday the idea of inviting a third-party notarization, but I didn't expect it to be you. Yuzwa Kudo didn't expect that the newcomer would be his old acquaintance. He explained with a smile. Shirakawa Jun told me a very interesting story, and we all agree that adapting this detective story into a game will definitely have an extraordinary impact on the entire gaming industry. This sentence is not only for Lawyer Fei, but also for the agent who has always been pessimistic about this cooperation. Really? It seems that this story has great charm. I wonder if I have the chance to catch a glimpse of its charm. Of course, madam. As long as you can guarantee not to disclose the specific content, we welcome you to review our script at any time. Baichuan entered the reception room and first responded to Fei Yingli's request with a smile. Then he pointed to the boat beside him and said, "Let me introduce you. This is the main planner responsible for the production of this detective game." The boatman immediately bowed and saluted. "Mr. Kudo, consort lawyer, hello. My surname is Boatman, and I hope you will take good care of me from now on. Don't say it too early, our cooperation hasn't been officially finalized yet." The agent frowned as she blocked the gap between Yuzwa Kudo and Hiroyuki, like an old hen protecting only the chicks. "As far as I know, your company's current business situation is not very good, and cooperating with you is a very high-risk thing." "I understand," replied the boatman with an unchanged smile on his face, following Shirakawa's previous instructions. The company did experience some turbulence recently, but with the joint efforts of all employees, the situation has stabilized and is even more dynamic than before the incident. We just have a meeting about the company's future planning, and you can attend and listen. End of this chapter.